Yeah, okay. So, okay. So just a minute. Yeah, you can you hear my voice, right? Online students, is it my voice is clear, right? Yes, online students, online. Okay, right? Yes. Okay, right. Now yesterday we have seen, yeah. So yesterday I said about, yeah. So path parameters we have seen. And after this path parameters, I said what is the difference between the query parameters and path parameters. Okay. And even I said a query parameter can hold multiple values. And how you are sending multiple values by giving the same parameter name will be the same. Okay. How the data is sent with the same parameter name is the same. Name equal to course, but value is what? Java. Name equal to course, but value is what? Python. And name equal to course and value is what? Net. Right. So name is the same, parameter name is the same, but you are trying to send different values. Different values. How you send it, see, you can also concatenate with URL. See, query string can be concatenated with what? URL. Now you are writing 127.0.0.1 slash. Okay, suppose my resource name is view1 question mark a equal to 10 comma a equal to, sorry, a equal to 10 and a equal to what here? 20. So it means you are sending how many values? One value you are sending or two values? Two values. But what is a parameter name? A. That parameter contain how many values? Two values. And where these two values get stored in one list? These two values get stored in one list. And how can you get the values from the list? By using a method called getList. So there is one method, and what is the name of the method is getList. So what is the difference between the get and getList? So get is a method to read a parameter having single value. Get is a method which is used to read a parameter having single value, but getList is a method to read a parameter is having multiple values. So that is where you find the difference between the get and what? GetList. Okay, right? So next we'll talk about, yeah. So next we'll talk about how to, so next we'll see how to communicate with database and how you communicate with the database. You communicate with the database, okay, by using ORM. You communicate with the database by using what? ORM. So what I'm talking about is models. So next what I'm talking about is model. So a Python program communicate with a database in two ways. One is by passing SQL statements, and second one is without using with statements, SQL statements within the program. And without using SQL statements means you are not writing any SQL statements within the program, but these SQL statements are generated by one mediator. Okay, one is by using SQL statements, and second one is without using SQL statements. Inside your program, you're not using SQL statements. You're communicating with the database by using object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming means I want to write a class. I want to write a class to communicate with what? Database. Okay. So I want to do everything by using what? Object-oriented programming means class assigned objects without using with statements, SQL statements. So let us develop those SQL statements automatically by what do you call it as model engine? Model engine. So you can communicate with the database. Django application communicate with the database by using one tool. And what is the name of the tool is ORM. By using one tool, and what is the name of that tool is ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Means communicating with the database by using object-oriented programming. Communicating with the database by using object-oriented programming instead of using which SQL statements, raw SQL statements within the program. You are not using directly which statement in the program, select statement. You are not using which statement in the program, insert statement. You are not using which statement in the program, update statement. You are not using which statement in the program, delete statement. Now these are called which statement? SQL statements. You are not using the statements. You are not using the statements. You are using only which one? Class assign. You are using class assign objects. In your program, you are using class assign objects. But who will generate these SQL statements? This SQL statements generated by ORM engine. It is generated by which one? ORM engine. ORM engine. For every operation you do in the program, for that operation generate an equivalent SQL statement that is generated by which engine? ORM engine. But why we are not using raw SQL statements within the program? Why we are using ORM? What is the advantage of ORM? What is the disadvantage of raw SQL statements? SQL statements are database dependent. SQL statements are database dependent. SQL statements are database dependent. What is the meaning of database dependent? The syntax of this SQL statements changes from one database to another. Commands will be the same, but syntax might be changes from one database to another. Suppose in one database you'll write select star from. In one database you'll write select all from. Okay, so it means the syntax of this statement is the same or different? Different. It changes from one database to another. In that case, my application becomes what? In that case, my application becomes what? Database dependent. In that case, my application becomes what? Database dependent. So whenever I do changes in the database, I have to do changes in what? Program. I have to do changes in the program because SQL statements are database dependent. And not only that, you find certain issues when you are working with the raw SQL statements. That is called as a problem called which one? SQL injection problem. You find which problem? SQL injection problem. Even this SQL injection problem also you avoid it by using which one? ORM. Means using ORM, you can develop database independent applications and secured web applications. That is done by using object relational mapping. So how you communicate with the database? You communicate with the database by using one tool. You are communicating with the database by using one tool. What is that? ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Object Relational Mapping. Okay. So most of the modern applications like you develop applications using Django or Flask, or you develop application by using Spring Boot. Or if you are developing application using .NET, suppose you are developing an application using Java. Java provide one ORM tool called Hibernate. So that is Hibernate is a ORM tool which is used to communicate with what? Database. So why all this application doesn't uses raw SQL statements? Because these raw SQL statements are database dependent. Raw SQL statements are database dependent. Okay. So what is the meaning of this is, okay, suppose I'm writing a Python program. Inside this program, I'm using one command called select star from EMP. I use one SQL statement called select star from EMP. I use one SQL statement called select star from EMP. Now assume that this is a syntax of which database? Oracle database. The syntax is understood by Oracle database. Assume that there is one more database is there. There is one more database is there which doesn't understand select star from EMP. Assume that there is a database called Sybase. There is a database called which one? Sybase. Sybase, no select, but the syntax of the select is not same in which database? Sybase. In Sybase, the select syntax is select all from what? EMP. Suppose at the time of developing my application, I develop application by using which database? Oracle. But after some days, I change my database. After some days, I change from database from Oracle to, I change my database from Oracle to which one? Sybase. Now is it this command work or doesn't work? Doesn't work. Is it this command will work or doesn't work? Doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yes or no? It doesn't work because what is the syntax of this? Select all from EMP. It means wherever I'm using this SQL statements, I have to do some changes or not? Yes. Not only that, see, I think you learn database communication in Python, right? Yes or no? Huh? Yes. Yes or no? You learn database communication in Python. In Python database communication, what you're trying to do? You are trying to send SQL statements or not? Yes. Using which object? Cursor object. Cursor dot. Cursor dot. What is the method is? Execute. Cursor dot execute. I'll say insert into EMP. Values, percentages, 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 percentages. Okay, percentages, comma, you define what here? Parameters. What is a parameter? Employee number, employee name, job. How many values you are inserting? Three values. Three columns, three values you are inserting. Now, this is a syntax understood by, or this is a syntax understood by which database? MySQL. The syntax is understood by which one? MySQL. But when it comes to the Oracle, what do you do it? Insert into EMP values colon 1, colon 2, colon 3. How you are writing it? Colon 1, colon 2, colon 3. Colon 1, colon 2, colon 3. Okay, then you define the parameters. What are the parameters? Suppose you define the parameters. What are the parameters like employee number, employee number, employee name, and one more is what? Job. Now, this is a syntax understood by which one? Oracle. It means the syntax of this SQL statements are same or different? Different. It changes from one database to another. In that case, my application becomes what? In that case, my application becomes what? Database dependent. It means whenever I do changes, whenever I change my backend, I have to do changes in what? Program. Whenever I change my database from MySQL to Oracle, I have to do changes in what? Program. According to the syntax of database. According to the syntax of database. So doing changes is nothing but rewriting the application or not? Yes. that becomes very complex. That becomes very complex. But I want to write a program. That program should work independent of. I want to write a program and that program should work independent of databases. Then what is the solution? I should not use. I should not use which statements? I should not use which statement? SQL statements. Let SQL statement generated by the engine. Okay, you just use which one here? Classes and what? Objects. I think you understood why you don't use raw SQL statements. Okay, what is the problem with the raw SQL statements? Is the SQL statement syntax changes from one database to another database. Okay, so problem with, yeah, first we'll see problem with using statements, raw SQL statements. Problem with using raw SQL statements within program. Problem with using raw SQL statements within program. First one is, tell me, SQL statements are database dependent. Okay, the syntax of SQL statements changes from one database to another. So whenever database changed, the changes has to be done. So whenever database changed, the changes has to be done. The changes has to be done inside what here? Application or program. Okay, this becomes what here? Complex. This becomes complex. Okay, so this is the first problem. Now, second one is, so there is a problem called which one? SQL injection problem, right? So you may come across the problem called SQL injection. Now these can be avoided, and not only that, the developer must have a knowledge of developer must have a knowledge of whom? Of which statements? SQL. You don't know SQL, then you cannot communicate with what? Database. You don't know SQL, then you cannot communicate with what? Database. So compulsory you should have a knowledge of which statements? SQL statements. So all these problems are limitations. Above problems or limitations can be overcome using what is this now? ORM. By using ORM, right? It means in ORM, you're not communicating with the database using which statements? SQL state. You are not writing SQL statements. You are not writing SQL statement. It is done by whom? ORM engine. ORM engine. So ORM. So what is ORM and what is the advantage? What is ORM and what is the advantage? ORM stands for object relational what here? Mapping. ORM stands for object relational mapping. Okay, it is a standard. ORM is a standard given by Python to communicate with various databases. ORM is a standard or abstracts given by who's given this? Python to communicate with various what here? Databases. To communicate with various databases. To communicate with various databases. Right? Now this is a specification given by Python and this is implemented by database vendors or it is implemented by frameworks and used by programmer. Okay, specifications, implementations. You should know that specifications, implementations, and what? Caller. Okay, specifications are implementation, and what is that? Caller. What is the meaning of this is? For example, assume that. For example, assume that you have a database like this. Okay, this is the database. This is which database? Okay, assume that this is MySQL database. Okay, assume that this is one database. And what is the database is? MySQL database. Okay, assume that you have one more database and this is Oracle database. Okay, this is Oracle database. Okay, assume that there is one more database. And what is the name of this database? SQL Server. SQL Server database. Okay, right? So how many databases are there? 3. Okay, now this is the Python program. What is this is? Python program. I want to write a Python program independent of what? Databases. That means my program should able to communicate with what? Any database. My program should able to communicate with what? Any database. Okay. So then what you are using now? ORM. Your program is using what? ORM. Okay. So what your program is using? ORM. What it define? Rules and regulations. Okay. Using this ORM rules, you write what? Program. Okay. Using these functions or methods, okay, you write a program. And after writing a program, somebody should translate, right? Somebody should translate whatever code I write into which statements? MySQL. I should translate into which one? Oracle. I should translate into what? SQL Server. Now, who will do that? ORM tool. ORM tool is nothing but ORM engine. ORM tool is nothing but what? ORM engine. Now, ORM engine will be there here. What is the name of this is? MySQL. MySQL ORM. And this is which one? This is which one? Oracle ORM. And this is which one? SQL Server ORM. SQL Server ORM. And what is the functionality of this? What is the functionality of this ORM say? The functionality of this ORM says converting. Because is it database understand classes and objects? Huh? No, database understand only one language. What is that? SQL. Database understand which language? SQL. But you are writing the program using classes and objects. You are writing program using classes and objects, but your database understand what? SQL statements. Then somebody should translate, right? Somebody should translate. Suppose if I'm creating object, creating object is nothing but inserting data. But actually how you insert the data in the database using which command? Insert command. Using which command? Insert command. Database understand only one language. Which language? SQL. But you are writing a program using classes and objects. Then how it converts, how it translate every object oriented functionality into which statement? SQL statement. That is done by using which one? Tool. That is done by one tool, or that is done by one engine. That is done by one engine. That is called which one? MySQL ORM, Oracle ORM, SQL Server ORM. All these are what here? Engines, which converts every ORM functionality into what? Database. Understandable means it will try to convert into which statement? SQL statements. Compulsory, because database understand only one language. Database understand only one language. Which language? SQL. But are you using any SQL statements in your program? No, you're not using any SQL statements in your program. You're just using classes and objects. So somebody should translate these object-oriented operations into an equivalent SQL statements. And that is done by ORM engines. That is done by ORM engine. Okay. So internally every ORM engine implement what? SQL libraries. Okay, right? So which convert that into SQL statements and send it to which one? MySQL database. Convert this into SQL statement and send to which database? Oracle database. Translate this into SQL statement and send it to which database? SQL Server database. But database, okay, database understand only one language. Database understand only one language. And what is that language is? SQL. Remember this. You are communicating without SQL, but internally it converts everything into what? SQL. Clear? What do you say here? Yes or no? Okay, now you can see, just open, okay, project. Now in settings.py, you find it, what these are here? Databases. And you can see engine. What is engine is? Django.db.backends.what? SQLite 3. What is the use of this engine? Converting which one? Object oriented programming into what? SQLite 3. Means SQL statements understand by SQLite 3. Okay, now suppose if I'm using the backend as a, if I'm using a backend as what? MySQL, then what will happen? It will convert every object oriented operation into which one? SQL statement understand by which one? MySQL. So compulsory you require an engine or not? Yes, because you are not using which statements? SQL statements. Are getting or not? Right? So what is the problem with the traditional approach you understood? Right? So in applications or projects, you never use raw SQL statements. You never ever use raw SQL statements. Now ORM is a specification, right? It is given by Python and used by, these rules are followed by whom? Python developer. And Python developer uses these rules, and these rules are implemented by ORM developers, ORM tool developers to translate every object oriented relational mapping instruction into what? SQL statements. Into what? SQL statements. Okay. So Django Django provide various ORM tools, and those are nothing but engines. Those are nothing but engines. Okay. But whenever you want to change the database, okay, whenever you want to do changes in what? Database, what do you do it? You do only changes in what? Engine. You do only engine. Engine you change it. Okay, you change only which one? Engine. But code will be same. Code is what? Same. But you change only engine. Because that engine will translate this code into what? Equivalent SQL statements. So in that case, your application becomes a database independent, right? So ORM is a specification. See here. Hmm. ORM specification of Python here. So if you see ORM specifications here, object-oriented relational mapping. So there is no single official specification, but it is a programming technique implemented by third-party libraries. But actually it is given by whom? Python. This specification. These are libraries follows a general set of principles to map which one? Python classes and objects to relational database tables and rows. Tables and what here? Rows. So, but you find different here. What is the advantage is ORM concepts here. One is mapping, automatic what? SQL generate. So who's generating this? Libraries. Libraries are nothing but engines. Libraries are nothing but what? Engines. And these engines automatically translate this into what? Equivalent SQL statements. Database, portability, no SQL. You don't require to write SQL statement. Relationship management, identifying the mapping and what is that? Sessions. All these are advantages. Now these are popular ORMs like there is SQL Alchemy and one more is Django ORM. And Django ORM provide so many libraries. Okay. Now you are working with which ORM? Django ORM. See, Django comes with all. Django comes with what? All. It is full stack framework or micro framework, full stack framework. Full stack framework means everything is loaded. Everything is available with what? Framework. You don't require to install anything separately. Suppose if it is, you are working with a Flask. Suppose you are working with what? Flask, you have to install ORM separately. What is the name of that ORM? SQL Alchemy. What is the name of that ORM? SQL Alchemy. Using that ORM, your Flask application communicate with what? Database. Suppose Fast API, Pyramid, all these are which frameworks? Not full stack frameworks. It is only micro frameworks, means limited resources. Micro means what? Limited. And you don't develop a full-fledged application using which one? Micro frameworks. But full stack framework completely it provide all the things in one package that you can call it as which framework? Full stack framework. Getting on. So Django, Django provides an inbuilt what? ORM called which one? Django ORM. So this comes with various what do you call it as ORM engines. It comes with various ORM engines. ORM engines are the same thing. You can call it as which one? Libraries. The same thing is called as which one? Libraries. What is the use of this ORM engines is translating object oriented with what? SQL statements. That is done by which one? ORM engines are what? Libraries. ORM engines are libraries, right? So what is the advantage? What is the advantage of what is this ORM? Tell me what is the advantage? What is the advantage of ORM? You can develop. Yeah, first one is database. Database what? Independency. First one is database independency. ORM allows to develop database independent applications by avoiding using which statements? Raw SQL statements. By avoiding using which statements? Raw SQL statements. So that is database independency. And second one is, what is that here? SQL what? Injection. So ORM avoids SQL injection problem, which allows to develop secured applications. And next one is object oriented. So ORM allows to communicate with database using class assigned objects. Allows to implement all object oriented principles. Okay, concepts like you can use classes, objects, which are nothing but what? Encapsulation. You can implement polymorphism. You can implement what here? Inheritance. That is how you generate a relationship between the tables by implementing which programming? Object oriented programming, right? So database independency, SQL injection, and object oriented programming, right? So these are some of the advantages of using which one? ORM. Okay. So I think you understood what is ORM is. ORM stands for object relational mapping. ORM is a standard or abstracts given by Python to communicate with various databases. And Django provides an inbuilt ORM called Django ORM. This comes with various ORM engines or what? Libraries. And what is the advantage of ORM? Database independency. What is the second one is? SQL injection. What is the third one is? Object oriented. What is the third one is? Object oriented here. So all these are advantages of using ORM. Okay. So now Django ORM, if you see Django ORM provides the following, what do you call it as ORM engines? ORM engines. If you see the list of ORM engines, engine is nothing but library only. What is the name? What is the engine is library? What is the name of the package is Django. And db.backends. What is the name of the module is SQLite 3. What is the name of the library is SQLite 3. Already I said this. SQL injection already I said and explained with the example also, right? Already I said and explained with the example in the introduction classes. In the introduction classes, I said already advantage of Django. In advantages of Django, Django allows you to develop secured applications. But how it will develop secured applications? I said different problems. Okay. Cross-site verification, cross-site request forgery. Okay. One more is SQL injection. All these are different problems you come across while developing which application? Web application. And I said, how SQL injection can be avoided by using which tool? ORM tool. Okay? Yes. So these are different ORM engines provided by Django framework. And what is the name of this is Django dot. I just give you all the library names. So this is a library name. This is the engine. And this is what here? Database. And this is for communicating with which database? SQLite or SQLite 3. So for that, you are trying to use SQLite 3. Now there is a Django dot db dot backends. And what is the name of the database? MySQL. And this is to communicate with which database? MySQL database. And Django dot db dot backends. And what is the name of this is? Oracle. And this is communicating with which database? Oracle database. And Django dot db dot backends. Okay. Postgres SQL. And this is to communicate with which database? Postgres SQL database. Okay, now these are database engines and these are nothing but what here? Databases. Okay, but MongoDB is NoSQL database. MongoDB is which database? NoSQL database. NoSQL database means you are, you are not using any SQL statements. Now in that case, you don't require to use what? ORM tool. You are not using any SQL statements, then you don't require to use which tool? ORM tool, because MongoDB is a no SQL database or no SQL database? No SQL database. In MongoDB, a database contain collection and collection is having what? Documents. It means always the data is stored in my MongoDB in the form of collections and what? Documents. It is nothing but in JSON format, which is nothing but key and value. Key and value. Okay. So if you want to communicate, if you want Django application want to communicate with what? MongoDB, you can just install one library called PyMongo and then you can communicate with what? MongoDB database, but you don't require which engine? ORM engine. Getting or not? Okay. Now these are different ORM engines to communicate with various databases. Okay. Right. So ORM is nothing but communicating with the database by using object-oriented programming. Communicating with the database, ORM is nothing but communicating with the database using object-oriented what? Programming. ORM is nothing but communicating. ORM is nothing but communicating with the database using object-oriented programming. That is nothing but classes and classes and what? Objects. Classes and objects. Classes and objects. Okay. Right. So let me tell you the basic steps. Is it clear what is ORM? Anything you want to ask here? Any questions apart from SQL injection? Because already I said what is SQL injection, right? Any other questions? Right? Okay. Then what are the basic steps? Tool or library both are same. engine, tool, library, engine, tool, library, all these are one and the same. Lakshmi Narayan. Okay, right. Okay, yes. ORM is nothing but object relational mapping. Means communicating with the database by using object oriented programming without writing which statements, SQL statements. Now, whatever you are writing in classes and objects, and those operations should be converted into what? SQL statements. By whom? ORM engines. Who will convert that? ORM engine. Okay, for every database, there is one ORM engine provided by whom? Django. Provided by which one? Django. So Django is a package and DB is a sub package. Backends is a package and SQLite is what? Again package. So how many packages are there? Getting on or so Django is a package, DB is a package, backends is a package, SQLite 3 is also package, and this contain the number of classes and functions. Okay, right. Then next, now what are the basic steps? What are the basic steps to work with? What are the basic steps to work with ORM? What are the basic steps to work with ORM? So what are the basic steps to work with ORM? The first step is so configuration of ORM engine. Configuration of ORM engine are the same thing. You call it as configuring which one? Database. Configuration of ORM engine is nothing but configuration of what? Database. Now configuration of database or ORM is done inside settings dot what? Py. In settings.py, there is one environment variable. There is one environment variable called which one? Databases. So there is one variable. What is this? Databases. Now here you have to configure. What is the default databases? Tell me, what is the default databases? What is the default databases? SQLite 3. And SQLite 3 is a file-based database. SQLite 3 is which database? File-based database. File-based database means it will create one file. What is the name of the file is? db dot. What is the name of the file? db dot SQLite 3. And where this file gets stored inside? Where this database gets stored inside? Base directory. Base directory is nothing but project container directory. Yes, base directory is nothing but which directory? Project container directory. Base directory refers to which directory? Project container directory. Inside a project container directory, it will create one database. What is the name of the database? DB. And what is the extension of this database? SQLite 3. Can I give any other name? Yes, I can give any name because is it database name is predefined or user defined? User defined. Now, which database you want to create? You just define the database name. But this database doesn't have usernames and what? Password because it is a file based. It is what? File based. It is not a server. It is a file based. Means you don't have any username, password, and what is that host port number? You don't have anything. You just define only location where your database is available. You define only location where your database is available. Now this is configuration of which database? SQLite database. Okay. So this is configuration of SQLite database. Configuration of SQLite 3 database. Now this is a default configuration. Okay. Suppose you want to configure what? MySQL. You want to configure which one? MySQL. Now this is configuration of which database? MySQL database. But can you configure multiple databases? Yes. Yes. Your application might communicate with multiple databases. So databases is one dictionary, and this dictionary contain key and value. What is a key? Name. What is a key is? Name, and value is database settings. Value is nothing but what? Database settings. Can I configure one more database? Yes. You want to communicate with multiple databases, then you can configure multiple engines. But most of the times you'll be working on only one database. Okay. Now suppose I want to configure which database? MySQL. Then what will I do? I'll change this name from django.db.backends. What is the name of this is? MySQL. But MySQL is a server or not? Yes, it is a database server. It is a database server, and inside the server, what do you do it? Create one database. You create a database. Give what name? Database name. What name you give? Database name. No path. Base directory you don't give it because it is a server. It is a server where you create a database. Then give the name of the database. Database name. Just give the database name. And the database is having what? Username. The database is having what? Username. You have to define database username. But how you are defining database username? By using one key called which one? User. But all these keys must be in uppercase because these are predefined. It is recognized by whom? Django engine. Getting or not? Okay. So name and one more is what? User name. What is the name of the key? User. This is to define which name? Database user name. Database user name. And then you have to define. What do you have to define? Password. And this is nothing but database. This is nothing but database password. Comma. Comma. Now where your database is running? Where your database is running, you define that. What is that name is? Host name. Host name is nothing but IP address. IP address of which one? System. IP address of system, or what is that? Host name. And your database run on a specific port number. You have to define what? Port. And this is nothing but port number. And what is the default port number is? 3333 what? 02. Whatever port number is there, you define that. So port number of which database? MySQL database. Port number of MySQL database. You have to define all this. So engine name, username, password, host name, and one more is a port number. Now this is if you want to communicate with which database? MySQL database. But what is the engine you choose? What is the engine is? Array, what is the name of the engine? MySQL. The name of the engine is MySQL. Name of the library is MySQL. The next configuration of which database? Oracle database. Everything will be the same. Everything will be the same. but which one is changed? Everything will be the same, but which one is changed? Engine. What is the engine here? Oracle. The engine is what here? Oracle. Yes. So I've just given configuration of how many databases? 3 databases. Okay. So first you configure. After configuring, what do you do it? After configuring, what do you do? Second one is, what is the second step is you have to develop. What do you have to do? You have to develop models. Because how you are communicating with the database, how you are communicating with the database by writing SQL statements or object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming, not by using which statement? SQL statements. So suppose if you want to insert data, okay, if you want to insert data into a database, what do you do first? You create a table. What do you do it? You create table. Yes or no? You create a table, and how you insert the data by using which command? Insert command. How you update the data using which command? Update command. How you delete the data using delete command. But here, how you represent table of your database into a Python program as a class. You define which one? Class. And this class, you call it as which one? Model. This class is called which one? Model. And models.py represent what? Database. And model represent what? Table. Models.py, there is one module. Every project is having one module or not? Yes. Every project, whenever you create an application, your application is created with one module. What is the name of the module? Models. What is the name of the module? Models. And within this model, what is the models represent here? Database. Models represent what? Database. And inside the database, every model represent one table. Every model represent one table. How you are communicating with the database? You are communicating with the database using classes and objects. You are communicating with the database using classes and objects. Now this is table. I want to create a table, or I want to access the table. I want to create a table, or I want to access the table. Then how I create a table, or how I represent table in my Python program? How I am representing table in my Python program? Class. What is a table? What is a table? Table is a set of rows and columns. Before inserting data, what do you do first? Create table. What do you do first? Create table. Create table, right? You create a table like this. How you create a table? Create table. Table name. Create table. Table name. Column name. What is this? Data type. Column name. Data type. Employee number. Employee name. Employee name is varchar 20. And there is a job which is again varchar 20. And there is some salary which is nothing but what? Float. Some 10 comma 2. Now this is how you create a table. How you are creating a table? By using which command? Create command. But I want to create a table. I want to create a table without using which command? I want to create a table without using which command? Create command. Then how can I create a table? By representing a table as what? Class. You are representing table as one class. Class. What is the name of the class? EMP. What is the name of the class? EMP. And this is having number of fields. What is the fields are? Employee number is which type you define. Here you define the type. Then employee number, employee name. And what is the employee name? You also define the type. Then job. Job is which type? You define the type. There is a salary and define the type. Salary type. So what class represent in Python program? Table. What class represent in Python program? Table. What is instance represent in Python program? Record. What this represent, record or row? How can you create a row? You create a row by creating what? Object. You create a row by creating which one? Object, where you'll say roll number, name. You define the roll number, name. Okay, sorry, employee number and name, and you define the job as well as what? Salary. Now creating object is nothing but inserting. Creating object is nothing but what? Inserting. Okay. Developing a class is nothing but creating what? Table. Creating table. Table. How you represent table as a class? How you represent a record as a object? How you represent a table as a class? How you represent an object as a how you represent a record as a object? Are getting or not? Right? So how you define these models? How you define these models? Okay. Second one is defining. Defining which one? Models. Defining models. What is model? What is model? What is model? Model means not that models, right? Okay, model. What is model here? Model is a class. Model is a class which represent table in what? Database. Okay. Model is a class which represents table within what? Database. Model is a class which represent table within database. And these models are defined inside a module called which one? Models.py. What models.py represent? Database models. Models.py is nothing but like database. And inside the database, what you have? Tables. And each table is one model. Each table is one model. Understood? What happened here? Okay, so how you create a table? By representing model. Okay, class represent what? Table. Class represent table. Their table. Here it is what? Class. You are mapping class with the table. Dekho here. ORM, object relational mapping. What you are mapping? Classes with tables. Class with what? Table. Class represent table. Anything you want to do it, you do it with the help of what? Class. Which class? Model class. Do everything by using which class? Model class. That model class provide so many methods. You want to delete, it provide a method called delete. If you want to update, it will provide a method called update. If you want to insert, it will provide a method called insert. But are you using any SQL statements? No, you are calling methods because class is a collection of Class is a collection of members. Class is a collection of members. How many types? Two types. Data members and member functions. Data members are nothing but variables. Member functions are nothing but methods. How many types of variables you write inside a class? Two types. Instance variables, class variables. How many types of methods? Three types. What is that? Instance methods, class methods, static methods. Yes or no? Then how to develop a model? That rules are given by Django. That rules are given by what? Django. Every model inherit from a class called which one? Model. How to develop a model? By inheriting which class? Model class. Inheritance. What is the meaning of inheriting? What is inheritance? What is the inheritance? What is inheritance? What is inheritance? क्या हुआ यार? Inheritance. Changing, creating, acquiring. Inheritance is a process of acquiring the process of array. Inheritance is a process of acquiring the properties and behavior of one class inside another class. Acquiring the properties and behavior of one class inside another class. Okay. Inheritance allows to build classes which share the similar properties. Inheritance allows you to build a new class using what? Existing class. Inheritance provides reusability and what? Extensibility. Reusability, extensibility allows you to build a new data type using what? Existing data type. It allows you to build a new data types by inheriting properties and behavior of existing class. That is done by using what? Inheritance. I want to develop a model, then I should inherit which class? Model class. I want to develop a view, I can inherit which class? View class. So inheritance allows you to build classes by acquiring the properties and behavior of another class. That another class is called superclass. The class which inherit is called subclass. Another class is called as a parent class. The class which inherit is called child class. Getting or not? Okay. Then how to develop a model? How to develop a mod? Suppose I write a class like this. Class EMP. Tell me EMP is a model. Huh? Is it EMP is a model class or class? Is it EMP is a model class or class? Class. It is a class, but it is not a model class. When it becomes model class, if inherit, if inherit which class? Model class. If it inherits the properties of which class? Model class, then it becomes what? Model class. Otherwise, it is only class. Suppose I write like this class dog. What is a dog? Dog only class. Dog only, but it's not animal. It is not a animal. When it is animal, if it is inherit from which one? Animal. If it inherits the properties of animal, then it becomes what? Animal. Dog is a animal. Otherwise, if I don't write this, what is dog? Class. Is it animal? No, it is not a type of. It is not a type of animal. If it is a type of animal, then it should inherit which properties? Animal. Now, dog is an animal. In the same way, employee is a type of model. If you want to build a model, it should inherit one class. Which class? Model class. And who provide this model class? Django, right? Yes. So what is a model? Model is a class which represent table within the database. And these models are defined inside a module called models.py. And that models.py represent what here? Database. And inside that, you define all the models. How to create a model? How to create a model? How to create a model? So every model class is inherited from which class? Model class. Inherited from which class? Model class provided by whom? Django. So where is this class is available in? Django dot is a inbuilt class. Model class is available. Model class is available in Django dot models dot. What is the name of the class is? Model. So every model class must inherit the properties and methods of which class? Model class. Okay. So what is the syntax? What is the syntax of creating a model? What model represent? What model represent? Table. What model represent? Table within database. Model represent table within database. How you write a model? Class. Class which name? Model class name. Class model class name and inherit. Which class? Model class. And before this, you import it from Django dot models, import model. Understood? What do you write in this? Field name. Field name equal to what? Type. Field name. So this is model types. I mean field types. Which type of data you want to store it? Okay, field type you represent it. Okay. And if you want, you can customize the methods also. How can you customize the methods? By overriding. How you customize the methods? By overriding. Okay. You override the methods of which class? Model class. If you want to customize, until unless you don't want to customize, then you don't require to override methods of which class? Model class. Understood up to this? Bolo yaar. Okay. Yes. Let us see. See here. Very easy. Django is easy. Python is easy. Okay. But coding is difficult. Right? Yes or no? Because you need to write lot of things. It is not like a simple Python program, right? As a simple Python program where you write something, right? No, you have to do lot of things, settings, views, models, templates. Okay, lot of configurations you have to do it. So for that you need to practice at least one or two times. Then you'll get an idea. But if you don't practice, if you practice after 1 week, खत्म कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आता ये VS कोड क्या है ये प्रोजेक्ट क्या है डिजाइन एडमिन क्या है कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आता ओके ना सो कंपल्सरी डेली यू हैव टू प्रैक्टिस डेली यू हैव टू क्रिएट 2 3 प्रोजेक्ट्स नथिंग विल हैपन खाली प्रैक्टिस करना ही है ना सो नथिंग विल हैपन ओके योर सिस्टम विल नॉट क्रैश योर सिस्टम विल नॉट क्रैश राइट so try to practice by creating projects and applications and try to execute it by creating views create a templates and include within the view and generate a response. Huh? Yes or no? You know already HTML. HTML मालूम है ना? Then use it. Use HTML with CSS. My CSS use नहीं कर रहा आप use कर सकते हैं ना? You know CSS. Write with some beautiful templates rather than plain templates. वो पूरा creativity रहना खाली आके सुन के गए तो कुछ नहीं मिलता है यार. Yes or no? You have to practice. Otherwise, no use here. Django, you have so many jobs. Django jobs are there, but students are not there. Okay, right? So if you are good in Django, you'll get a job. Okay, na? Right. So model, field name and define what? Type. Define field name and what? Type. Okay. Then next is, now, see here. Open the VS Code. VS Code is working, right? Server is running, huh? Running or not running? Running, very good. But all the people are not saying, miss, server is dead. Huh? Server is dead. Everything is dead. Okay. You have to, yeah, terminal. Open the terminal. Tell me. Create a project. Create a project. Create a project. Okay, right? Then after creating project, Django admin, start a project. Project name, right? Naina. Okay. Project spelling. Huh? py start. Any name you can give. My application one below the you also say application one. Okay, you can give any name. Your application name can be what? Any name. Your application name can be any name. Okay, so don't think that your application name is the same, right? कुछ भी नाम दे सकते हैं आप. Okay, now after this, project is done, application is done. Open this. What is the project is? 9. What is the current version of NumPy? What is the current version of NumPy? Okay, what is the current version of Django? 6.0. 6.0. Okay. What is the current version of NumPy? Khatam, Tata, bye bye. Okay. First question ही. हाँ? First question ही चलेगा. हाँ? Yes or no? बोलो यार. First question is Tata. Open models.py. Models.py. Okay, now here, sorry. Django.db. I've written wrong here. Django.db. Where you find this class? db. Django.db dot models. Django.db dot models. This module, okay, is having which class? Model class. Okay, right? So here, now where it is in application, every application is having one module. What is the name of the module? Models.py. Now create a model class. Writing a model is nothing but creating table. Writing a model is nothing but creating table. Okay. So what is a table? Which table you want to create? Define the table name. But what is my database? Array, what is my database? MySQL. SQL Lite. MySQL ఎక్కడ పెట్టినామా? SQL Lite. SQLite is a file. This is database file, and this database file gets stored in which directory? Base directory. Is it there? There? Is it database is there or not there? Not there. It will create. Don't worry. It will create with this name. Can I change this name? Change the name? No or yes? No. Array. Payroll. I give the name as what? Payroll dot SQLite 3. What is SQLite 3 here? Extension. What is this extension? And what is this database name? What is database name? Payroll. What is the extension? SQLite 3. Okay, na? Who developed SQLite 3? Huh? Who developed SQLite 3? Naresh Shetty, huh? Who developed SQLite 3? No, no, no. SQLite 3 database developed by who? Which who? Python. Testing purpose they developed. SQLite 3 belongs to Python. MySQL is belongs to MySQL. MySQL is belongs to Oracle. Oracle is belongs to Oracle. Yes or no? You should know this here. Minimum knowledge. SQLite is belongs to Python only. They develop this database for testing because they develop database API, right? they should test it. For that, they develop what? A database called SQLite 3. And they develop a database driver to communicate with what? SQLite 3. Then later, other people used this DB API and developed different drivers. Okay. But this is belongs to Python only. It comes with the Python. They go up import. Will install SQLite 3? No. You directly in Python program write import SQLite 3 and then connect and then insert data, update data, delete data. Directly you can do it. Okay, you don't require to install what? SQLite 3. Fine, no problem. Now this is my database and in this database, I want to create a model. I want to create a table. Okay, so we'll say this otherwise. It will take some time. So tomorrow we'll discuss how to create models and what is migrations, make migrations. All these things we'll discuss in detail. Not today, but tomorrow. Right? Thank you. We'll see tomorrow. Right. And I'm starting a Flask and Fast API. Flask and Fast API in the morning 7:30, right? Okay. So maybe from Monday onwards, okay, morning 7:30 Flask and Fast API. If you want, you can attend. You can do two frameworks. ఒకటే అర్థమైతలేదు सर नो ఒక్క एक ही समझ में नहीं आ रहा अभी दो दो तीन तीन बोले तो खत्म हाँ दिमाग उठ जाता हाँ सो आपकी मर्जी योर विश if you want you can attend Flask not number of days only 10 classes are like that okay so Flask and Fast API if you want you can attend maybe from Monday onwards I may start okay once I start I'll inform okay those who are interested they can attend but for your batch also I'll teach Flask okay but those who want to complete in fast track means they want to complete everything in okay 1 day 2 days so for them right thank you we'll see tomorrow right thank you yaar